Okay, welcome back to the Caribou Media Outdoors podcast. With me tonight is Scott Bakken from Dialed Archery. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
That's great. I was trying to remember where I first. Well, I remember I first saw you in a video from, I think it was HHA, and you were
Oh,
in the woods, and you were talking about how to sight in whatever the new site was. We're going back like years,
yeah.
right, at this point.
Yep. Yep.
And then I remember the first bit of stuff from the Arxos came out, and I saw you in the promo thing, and I'm like, "That's the HHA guy." I didn't know your name at the time, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, he's starting his own site. Oh, this is gonna be good."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny.
Funny how life just kind of throws you curveballs and it was yeah, I mean it's you look back that because it has been a while now and I've told the story hundreds of times, just like my upbringing. And I grew up in the archery industry, ever since I was a little kid. I was very fortunate, to kind of have grown up when I did in the industry because, you know, within like our team at Dial, like I am the old guy. Like,
Mm.
I mean, I am, the old man of the group. And, I catch myself, like I remember back when, like,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
definitely fit that mold. But yeah, I mean, ever since I was a little kid, just archery was always, it was just, the one thing that just always held my attention, like, I bounced around from sports and, school was never really my thing. But, archery was just always, it just always held my attention. It was like the older I got, the more obsessed I became with it.
Mhm.
So then, fast forward to, like those days, and, that's, I think, when I truly, it took that long. So, I mean, you're talking 30 plus years where I finally kind of realized, like, okay, this is where I want to, like, basically build my career. And, this is what I want to do. But, all along the way, like, it was just always like, what's next? What's next? It was like kind of
Right.
building.
Yep.
And, you know, I I remember my dad told me, when I graduated college, because I mean, I knew I wanted to be in the archery industry. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Right.
Right.
And he's like, well, 5 years. He's like, you start a job, you stick with it for 5 years, and within
Mm.
that time, if you like it, whatever. And so that was always kind of my timeline. And but it like like it was like subconsciously. Like it's not like I had a stopwatch on it, but it just always seemed right around that 5 year mark. It was just like, okay, what's next? Like I just always wanted that next challenge or whatever.
Yep.
And yeah, so again, going back to like that time frame, it was coming up on, that 5 year mark. And I think it was actually even 6 years. And, things were changing and, we were coming off of COVID. And I could feel that like fire inside me, like, okay, what's the
What's
next
next?
challenge? Like I
Right.
just wasn't being challenged enough, like wasn't, being utilized to my true, potential. Like I just felt like I had all these tools in my tool belt, but I just, they just weren't being used. And yeah, it was just time to make a change. And I'll be honest, it was like the first time in my life where I seriously was considering a total career change, just getting
Mhm.
out of the industry completely
Yep.
and doing something different. And I had no clue what that was. Maybe, being working in pest control or rodent control. I have no clue. I
Yeah.
had no plan. And then, along came these two friends of mine who are Jordan Riley and Taylor Coleman, who are the other two founders of Dialed. And we had been friends for a long time, before that. And yeah, it's kind of funny, again, because I mean that is how like a lot of people like recognize me and also recognize Jordan Taylor's from the work we did back then together. But you kind of you have like this aha moment of like there's a reason we all met, right?
Right.
There's a reason why we're all really, really good friends, and then entered like, TJ Eads, who's our engineer. And it's like, okay, this is just crazy, right?
Everything's coming
And
together.
it's like you have all these dudes,
Yeah.
and we're like, it was almost kind of like this awkwardness of like what do you guys like what are you looking at? I'm like, I don't know, what are you looking at? And then it like I'll never forget the night that I called Taylor and I was like, hey, because everybody was kind of going through these changes, right? Like we were all in the exact same spot of our lives where we were ready for this next challenge or this next step.
Mhm.
And I remember I called Taylor and I was like, we should start our own archery company. He's like, you're crazy. I'm like, no,
Yep.
for real. I was like, we should start our own archery company. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, but we'll figure it out,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so some time went by and I just kind of it was like my last like, okay, I need to do something or I'm gonna lose my shit. And I felt like I was just sinking,
Mhm.
and like, you hear all kinds of talk, about like guys and, we're supposed to be these tough, like, human beings where we don't talk about shit. Like we just bury it all down. Well, I was getting to the point where like I can't bury stuff any longer. And, you know, it's, it's like you get drugged down so deep that you don't even see a way out. And this was the way out. So, I mean,
It all comes out at some point, right?
yeah, and, again, it was just one of those things where it was just like all these, like, pieces of this puzzle were there, and we all had these skill sets, and it's like, we have what we need to start a company
Mhm.
minus the capital,
Yeah.
that was the other big question, but, and yeah, so, walked away from, a comfortable job, a comfortable lifestyle, and, gambled it all up in, a way, and that's, here we are
Wow.
4 years later.
Yeah, I mean, they say that people should shuffle things up every 5 years, or some people go through 5 different careers even
Yeah,
sometimes before they find what they want, so,
yeah,
yeah,
well,
that's
and it's funny 'cause, like, literally right before this, I was talking to a really good buddy of mine, and, we were talking about we haven't talked, in 2025 yet, so we were just doing a quick, briefing on
check-in.
what's new,
Yeah.
what's going on, whatever, and yeah, just, check, and, he's like, "Man," he's like, "I'm feeling like, 25's just it's not I'm not feeling it, like, and the last time I felt this way, I changed careers." And he's like, "So, maybe it's time for me to change a career." And he's right around that, 5 to 6 year mark. And I'm like, "Yeah, man, that's just something about that time frame. Like, when you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it, and you got to make a change." And yeah, for me, it was I had kind of accomplished every or kind of checked every box off that I kind of wanted to within, what I wanted to do in the archery industry. I started off as, working as a bow tech behind, the counter at a local bow shop, and then, went to work for another shop, was a manufacturer sales rep. I was a buyer. I worked, for a family owned business. And so entrepreneurship was the only thing missing. And that was something that had always attracted me. And like a lot of people don't know this, Taylor and Jordan do, but at one point I actually tried to buy an archery company on my own just as kind of like a little side hustle.
Mm,
And that didn't work out. But going through that process, that's what ignited the spark that like
yeah.
I want to do this someday. And the timing was right. And I was fortunate at the time that I don't have kids or, not married. So, I don't have anybody depending on me.
Right.
So it's, if you were just going to risk everything and take a gamble, now's the time to do it. And if it doesn't work out, I can rebound, I can, go work at the gas station for 18 bucks an hour until, I find the next endeavor. But yeah, so it was just crazy how everything was just kind of staged perfectly, right?
Mhm.
Like timing was
Just
perfect. The team was already set. We didn't have to go searching. Like everything just kind of gravitated towards this idea of dialed archery. And at the time it wasn't even dialed. Like we didn't even know what we were going to call it, right? It was just like we all knew like we were very like-minded when it came to kind of like how we looked at the industry, and that it needed some new blood. It needed somebody to come in and shake things up, create some waves, and promote some innovation. And it's like, let's be those guys, right? Like, and so yeah, it's just kind of crazy how it all kind of came together. And like I said, here we are, almost, well, 4 years later, and we're still climbing. So it's wild.
That's amazing. Were you guys like friends from a young age, or how did you all
No,
kind of
we
meet?
all met, working, in, Taylor and Jordan own Captured Creative, which is a
Right.
media marketing company.
Yep.
And so that's how we met, I worked with them on a lot of content management and social media management, uh,
Okay.
my previous job. So that's how we met. I had never met them before that. I mean, it was a cold email that they sent me, wanting to do some work in exchange for some product. And then, they came on as a full-time capacity. And, Taylor, when I made the decision that it was time to resign, Taylor was the first one I called. And I was like, hey, man, I'm going to be resigning. And, um, and for obviously he's like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. And then that's when the wheels kind of started in motion. And, cause I hadn't, I guess I shouldn't say I hadn't officially made up my mind, but I knew something had to change. And, uh, and I remember I was, I think I was driving somewhere, and I was just having one of those days, where it's just like, it was just a shit day. And I was like, dude, I'm telling you, I think we need to do this, And he called me the next day, and he's like, let's do it. And I'm like, are you, seriously?
Yeah.
And like I said, we literally, I mean, things kicked off the next day. And, um, you know,
Smash the gas pedal.
pretty much, I mean, yeah, I mean, there was, there was definitely some hesitancy, because I truly believed and like loved the brand that I was representing before,
Mhm.
and but there was just no end game. Like I knew there's like, in the end, I was always going to be where I was, which
Right.
for a lot of people is fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just for me, I don't like complacency. I don't like mediocrity. If I'm not being challenged, I'm going in reversed, right? So like if you're not growing every day, you're going backwards, and that's truly how I felt. And so yeah, it was a really hard decision, because I mean, like I said, I truly liked and cared about the brand, but this is I needed to do this for me.
Mhm.
And I remember I was talking to one of my buddies who, I really valued his opinion. And I was like, man, I gotta tell you about something. And so I bounced the idea off him. He's like, well, what are you afraid of? And I was like, well, what if it doesn't work out? He's like, well, what if you don't try it? I'm like,
Yeah.
I will hate myself forever, and I'll never be able to look at myself in the mirror. He's
So
like,
you've already made up your mind. Yeah.
yeah, and that was the day I'm like, holy shit. Like, and obviously the next people I had to tell were my parents. And, I called them, said, hey, I'm quitting my job. I'm gonna start my own business. And
What the fuck are you doing?
yeah, well, my dad, he owns his own business. He's like, great, I think you should definitely
Oh,
do this.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my mom has always been my biggest critic, the
Yeah.
hard sell.
Right.
She's like, you're an idiot. Like
Cool.
it's never gonna work. Like you're gonna fail. You're gonna regret this. Blah blah blah. Like, what are you gonna do for money? Where are you gonna get the money? Like I was like, Mom, just just trust me, right?
Mhm.
Like I know I have proved you right 99% of the time when you've told me I'm an idiot and I'm stupid. Like, yeah, my track record does not prove otherwise, but I feel like I really got to do this, and I was very lucky that Taylor and Jordan, were in similar positions and, wanting something different. And like I said, it was it sounds so cliche, and I even feel kind of weird saying it, but it's like this was meant to happen,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I mean, again, how do you have 3, 4 people that are all in the same boat, feeling the same way, and they meet at the right time?
Yeah,
you
it's one
know,
of those magic moments.
it
Yeah.
just it really was. And you know, I still, you know, I think about it and like I get chills because it's just this was meant to be, you know. And who knows what the future holds for Dialed, but I mean, as of right now, like it's, you know, we're exactly where, you know, we dreamed of being day one. So yeah, you know, it's just it's a true testament to, you know, the team that we have, and the team that we've built, you know, all of our, you know, all of our team, both internal and external. Like it's, I mean, it's just it's awesome. I mean, Dialed wouldn't be where it is today without them, or without everybody, I should say.
So how did you guys land on a site idea?
um you know, it's been so long now. I don't remember the exact, like, I remember the conversation. You know, it was one of those late night like Zoom meetings, and I mean, because we had like this. You know, TJ calls them a scorecard. Now, you know, at then it was just throwing darts at a dartboard. But you know, one of the very first ideas we had was a release. I'd
Mm,
always had this idea for a release that I thought would be really cool, but it was a market that none of us really knew anything about, you know, and barriers of entry were a little steeper because, you know, it's a lot more competitive. And you know, we really just looked at all these different categories, and you know, where what was kind of the low hanging fruit as far as what could we change the most and where could we make the biggest impact. And when we talked about sites, obviously that being my background, but just as a whole, the site category was just very stale. You know, it was very saturated with a lot of the same products, and not that there was anything wrong with them. You know, there's a lot of great, you know, sites out there and a lot of great companies that have been doing it way longer than us, but everybody was just looking at like primarily the mover, you know, adjustable sites. Like they were all looking at them the same way, and they were just like one company would do this and then everybody would follow it, and then
right.
another company would do this and everybody would follow it. You know, it's like if you ever watch little kids like playing hockey or soccer, like they all just flock to the puck or the ball, right? And they
The
just chase
mob.
it around. You know, nobody's in the center, no one's like, you know, waiting for the puck to come out or for the ball to get kicked out, right? They just
Yeah.
follow each other. So it was pretty easy to decide like, okay, this was the category we were going to get into. And I mean, it didn't take us long at all to whip up the first initial concept. Like we had already kind of had these initial ideas, and it was kind of stuff that I had like in the back of my head for a while. But then with input from Taylor and Jordan and TJ, because I mean, we're all diehard bow hunters, like we're all users. And so we had experience using a lot of different products in the past, and we had, you know, we had our list of things we liked and things that we didn't like. And right about that time, you know, the popularity of the total archery challenges and, you know, the mountain festivals were just starting to kick off. And after attending some of those and seeing how people were using their sites and where they were coming up short, so it was just kind of like this compilation. And like I said, we just, I mean, really just threw it all together really quick, and it was like, holy shit, like we have a site.
Mhm.
And you know, we dug into it, and you know, but the biggest thing is we just didn't want to be another site company. Like it had to be different,
Yeah.
it had to have a different look, it had to have a different function, but ultimately in the end, it had to benefit the shooter, right? It couldn't just be another movable adjustable site. Like there had to be a benefit to using our site over other people's.
Mhm.
And that's where like the angled rail came in, where the void dial system came in. And yeah, we took off running.
Yeah, when I first saw the Arxos, I was like, "Oh, the bubble's at the top, finally!" Because I've always wanted a sight with the bubble at the top. I always draw back, I go to the top, and I work my way down, and usually I
Right.
have to go to the top, go down to the bottom to see the bubble, and then go back up to the pin. So now this is just a faster target acquisition for me.
It's just it's way more natural. And that
Right.
again, after, you know, I mean, you know, being at all these different events, and it was amazing how many people just don't use their level. And
Mhm.
and it's like, well, why aren't they using it? And you know, one, I just don't think at that time a lot of people realized how important it was and what the benefit was. But then two, you look at it, it's in like the worst spot ever, because when it's at the bottom, you have to take your eye off the target to look at the level, right?
Right.
And that's really just a waste of time and energy, and it's inefficient. So if you put it at the top, now it's right in your peripheral vision. Like, you don't even have to look at it, you just look through it, right?
Yeah,
So
and it's also tucked way up into the housing there, so it's almost not even obstructing any of your sight picture,
no,
which
it doesn't at all. The only thing it really changed, I noticed for me, is I always ran like a smaller peep, so it would cover my scope ring, my alignment ring.
okay,
Where now I had to go to just slightly bigger peep, because otherwise it would cover the level.
you
But
wouldn't see it at all, yeah.
no, but I mean, it that was an easy swap, and the benefit still outweighs, having to change the peep side. But
And then
yeah, so
the angled rail, and it's like, "Oh, that makes so much sense, you're gonna be able to shoot farther," and
it's
it's just
literally the only way to pick up additional yardage without changing anything in your setup, right? And like, you can make the elevation rail as long as you want to on a perpendicular rail, but you are always going to run out of clearance, right?
Mhm,
Like, just because you make this longer, it doesn't give you more clearance, right? The only way is to get that rail at an angle. And the whole, like, what we're trying to replicate is, like, if you were to take a foot long bar with just a fixed housing on the end of it, and you shot, let's say, at 40 yards or 20 yards, and you started with the bar fully extended, and then every shot you moved the bar in closer, you'd see your arrows climbing the target. So
right,
that's what we're replicating, but it's not changing anything with your setup. So, like, with our yardage tape, like, the easiest way to see it actually happening is look at your yardage tape. So if you were to compare our yardage tape to like an HHA, a Spot Hog, or anybody else's, the further they go out in distance, the further apart their marks get, right?
right,
With ours, the further we go out in distance, the closer our marks get.
mhm.
So that's how we're extending the range without changing anything, and it truly works.
Yeah, because I have mine and my proof, and, I've got the tape on it, and I can go past the tape and
Mhm,
still have clearance, so I'm
mhm.
gonna try and put another one on there or try and mark even additional yardage
Yeah.
past 100, like, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's, I mean, even to this day, and especially now with the proof, because I mean, the proof is just so badass. But the Arxos is still a great site, but it was our first product, right? So we learned a
Yep,
lot. And
yeah,
I mean, even to this day, like, I'm still amazed at what that angled rail does, especially for like lower poundage, shorter draw length shooters. Because if you're shooting a lightning fast bow, I mean, yardage generally isn't an issue, right? But when you see what that angled rail does with like somebody that's shooting like 40 pounds,
yeah,
I mean, you'll see like their 20, 30, 40-yard marks. I mean, with these big gaps, like 10, 11, 12 marks. But then you see when that angled rail kicks in, and all of a sudden it shrinks down to like 5 marks. You're like, holy shit. Like it, I mean, it's so crazy. It's wild. And it was funny, in the beginning, as the Arxos started to gain traction and we started shipping more of them, how many people would get a hold of us and be like, I think I messed up my tape. And I'm like, well, what are your marks? They'll be like, well, my 20 is this, my 30 is this, but then my 40 is this. But then at 50, it's like way less. I'm like, that's the angled rail
that's
kicking in. Like,
yeah,
that is the angled rail kicking in. So yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, you always think, like, I mean, how many times, like, have you been, at your buddies, or, sitting in the garage with all your, hunting buddies drinking beer, and you're like, would be a great idea? And you're like, like,
ah,
we can't be if somebody's already thought about that,
right, right.
like,
Or you
it's like,
draw it on a napkin or something.
yeah, and it's like, "Oh, shit, we're the guys that actually thought about putting an angled rail on a site," and it, like I said, I mean, it does work. So
And then it flips to the side and there's a hole in it, and I was like, "Oh, that looks so cool."
yeah, well, and
Uh,
that was another thing, is, and again, I mean, that's full credit to, my partners and TJ, with, having the marketing. I mean, the marketing mindsets that they do is like, from a distance, all the sites look the same.
yep,
And it was wild how, I mean, even I think back to, like, some
the
of the
one color.
days. Well, yeah, and it's like you would ask, be like, "Oh, what site are you running?" I don't know. It's one of those 3-pin movers. Like nobody knew.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't even remember the name of the site they were, or they were shooting. And it's like, nah, we got to make this like you see this from a mile away, you got to be able to recognize it. And I mean,
Yeah.
you see that donut hole dial, and then the color combinations that we have, and it's very recognizable. And
Yeah, you hit so many different areas because not only do you have parts of it that are going to make it stand out and make it better for the shooter, but you're also pulling on our all of us love color customization and all that shit, right? So the and the fact that if you change from one bow to another, like I have the standard bar on this one, but
mhm,
I'm getting the new prime form, so I bought
mhm,
the Picatinny. You
mhm,
flip those out and you don't have to, it's not like, you know, if you're shooting a Matthews and then the next year you go shoot something else, if you
that's right.
had a bridge lock Matthews, oh, you have a bridge lock sight that you can't mess around with, then you're in getting a new sight. Whereas this one, you can interchange.
Yeah, and that was one of the big things we learned, again with the Arxos, like, it was our first stab, and we knew that we had a lot of learning to do, but you know, we were almost to the point where like we had redesigned the Arxos so many times that we were actually kind of going backwards with it.
Right.
And it's like we got to get this thing to the market, and then people will let us know what they like and what they don't like, and they let us know very quick. And that was one of the things was,
Yeah.
and it was a complete miss on our part because we were under the assumption that Matthew shooters always shot Matthews, Hoyt shooters always shot Hoyt, that there wasn't a lot of switching between brands, but there definitely, I mean, more so now than I'd say there ever was, like, and I think that's great, right? I think everybody, you got to shoot what's out there and see what fits you best. But we didn't realize how much brand swapping there was, and we learned really quick. Like shit, we totally missed this. So yeah, everybody let us know that they didn't like the fact that you couldn't swap out the brackets, and so now on the proof you can. But yeah, and like the color thing, that was just you know, like why not? Like, all these bow companies are spending all this time marketing, these solid colors and whatever, but nobody's doing anything to capitalize on that. So
Hmm.
introduce Cerakoting, sites. And, I know that had been done before, like a long time ago. So it's nothing that we like, we didn't, start it. We're just the ones that made it cool,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
being able to match your sight frame to your bow color and then add your own little custom flair on it with, the different colored dials and whatever. And, now you see people, trying to accomplish, the same thing that we do. But, that
Yeah.
is like what we do. So like everybody can try, but I mean, that's our deal.
Oh,
So
for sure. So how, going back to the beginning then, how do you guys come together? How do you get this off the ground? Now,
hopes.
don't share anything you don't want to, you're not comfortable sharing, but like,
No, no, no. I mean, it's no secret because I mean, I think that's the one thing that we've always been is very, upfront, honest, and transparent with everything we've done. And yeah, I mean, sure, there's some stuff behind the scenes we can't share, but I mean, no, I mean, it's so dialed, going back to like we have this team, right? But now, and we have this design, but where do we get the money to start this, right? And unfortunately, none of us come from money. We don't have trust funds that we can tap into, or money from our parents. I
mhm,
mean, I did go to my parents, was like, hey, can I borrow 40 grand? And they're like, get lost, like you still owe us from back when you were in college and couldn't whatever.
right.
But so, again, it goes back to the timing. It was coming off of COVID. The real estate market was booming.
Oh, yeah.
And I was lucky that, again, I didn't have anybody depending on me. So I sold my house, and, I had quite a bit of equity in it. So that's what we used. I was able to pay off some debt that I had. And then every dollar that was left, we put in. That's what we started Dialed with. I mean, that's what
Well,
we bought our prototypes with. And then as owners we all had to kick in our equity share. So I mean, we all had to come up with, a couple $1,000s for that. And then it was just scraping together every dollar we could. Like I said, I sold my house, cashed in all my 401ks, my savings account, any dollar that I had. I mean, that's what we put into Dialed. And, it was a little different for Taylor and Jordan because, I mean, they had new young families. And so it's very scary for them to go to their wives and be like, hey, we're going to start this business with this guy that you've never met before.
Yeah.
But,
Don't worry, it'll be fine.
yeah, don't worry. He's cool. Like he's one of us.
He's
He's
cool
cool.
guy. Yeah.
Like yeah. And so no, yeah. I mean, we funded Dialed. I mean, just with all of our own money, and we still have when we got to the point where we had a plan, we had a product, and we had exhausted all of our personal funds,
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, we need more money. Where
Yeah.
where do we go? And it's like, do we start looking for investors? And we're like, no, like we don't want to do that. Like we want to do this on our own. And so we went, started knocking on, the doors of any bank that we could, and most of us told us to eat shit and don't come
Mhm.
back. And
Yeah.
we found one local bank that Taylor and Jordan had already kind of had a relationship with, and he's a bow hunter, and
Oh, perfect.
thought what we were doing was awesome.
Yeah.
And
You can have the first one.
yeah, yeah. And to this day, he's our best friend, but he's also our worst enemy because bankers, they're risk mitigators, right?
Yeah.
So but yeah, so we were able to secure a line of credit through the bank, and we blew through that in a matter of weeks. Because going back to like the timing thing, I mean, the timing was perfect for everything except for procuring materials. I mean, everything was so expensive, and from the material cost to the other hard thing was just even finding machine shops that would be willing to work with us.
Right.
And the most important thing to us was keeping this USA made and trying to keep it as local as possible. So a lot of people don't realize that we're based out of central Minnesota, and everything we do is made in the United States, with exception to a few components like our levels we get from overseas, our sight lights, the components for that come from overseas. But the site itself, everything is done here. But all the local shops just looked. I mean, Taylor and I went to I don't know how many different shops locally. They're like, yeah, it's pretty cool, but no, we don't want anything to do with it. And or if they did, their costs were just. I mean,
We're just
I
through the
remember at
roof.
one point, like, yeah, I mean, our material costs, like our bill of materials, were creeping up on like what we retail them for. And we're like, there's no,
Oh,
way. And it's just you pull on enough strings and you meet the right person, and they know somebody that might know somebody that might know somebody that might know somebody, and here we are today. And I mean, our manufacturing partners are, I mean, they are, without them, I mean, we wouldn't, I mean, Dial would never existed. And I mean, it was a huge gamble for them. It was a big risk. I'm sure some of them are still wondering like what the hell were we thinking, but it's again, it just goes back to the team. It's just like I've said it, I don't know how many times, but like I've never been part of a team that's like as strong as what we have. But and that includes our manufacturing partners. I mean, they're the best. So
mhm.
and like I said, they put a lot of faith in us, and we still have a lot of proving to do. And we're still a small company, but it won't be like that much longer. So
And was there a story that some of the first initial parts that came didn't fit together or something like that
none of
when you
them
were
fit
none?
together. Yeah. No, that was
Oh, fuck.
yeah, that was another learning lesson is, build the site before you sell it. And
Oh,
it wasn't that dramatic. But yeah, no, I mean, I mean, nothing was easy from the beginning. I mean, we had this badass looking site. We thought we had everything, worked out, and then all the parts start coming in and they're not going together how we thought, right?
right,
And we had a combination of machined aluminum parts with injection molded parts. Well, we learned that some injection molded parts aren't meant to work with aluminum parts, and vice versa. So it's just getting everything to fit, and we're trying to learn as we go, and we're trying to change things. And yeah, it was, I mean, I wouldn't go back to those days. Like, I mean, it was so brutal and it was so frustrating. And I've told this story hundreds of times. There was a time where our frustrations reached their max, and I mean, it was the day where it's like we either shut things down now and we cut our losses and we move on and we all go our separate ways, or we, let's call it a day and we'll come back fresh tomorrow. Cause I mean, we had been putting in, I mean, months of like, I mean, long days with no sleep, and just nothing was working, and it was like the harder we tried, the worse we did. And we just couldn't catch a break. And, we were pre-selling sites to help, it was kind of like a GoFundMe thing.
Right.
And
Help us get off the ground kind of thing.
yeah, and but again, going back, like we were transparent with everything. We were sending emails, we were calling people, being like, "Look, parts came in, they sucked. We got to go back to the drawing board." And
Mm-hmm.
the amazing thing is, and I've said this before, but I hope there's a day where I can meet every single person that was part of the initial launch, because the amount of support and patience that people showed was, I mean, I thought we were fucked. Like, I mean, I was like, people are going to hate us. They're going to cancel all their orders. We're going to owe all these people money that we don't have. Like, we are going to be so screwed. But the amount of people that were like, hey, I'm good. Just take your time.
Yeah.
Just make it right. Like,
Make it
I'm
right.
good. Even if it's past hunting season, I'm good. Like, what you guys are doing is awesome. Like, just stick with it. Like, we had way more of that than we did people being like, forget you guys, give me my money back. You guys suck, right? Like, there definitely was that.
Oh
But
yeah.
there was way more support than, I mean, we deserved. I mean, it was insane. And yeah, we just kept clawing and grinding, and
that definitely takes a level of mental toughness, because most people, I think it's fair to say, reaching the steps that you had to take to get to where you are, and then to have the initial run show up and they don't connect together. Most people would probably just say, "That's it, fuck it, we're done."
It would have been so easy. I mean,
right?
honestly, like, it would have been so easy, just because, I mean, we would have been out some money and time. That's really it. But again, I think it was that, looking back, it's like, if we call it quits, we're going to regret this, because we knew we had something, and we all truly believed in what we were doing and like the team we had. It's just, we didn't know as much as we thought we did. And I also think, going back to like the financial side of stuff, like the fact that I mean, we had so much of our own money invested in this. Like, for me, and I know Taylor and Jordan felt the same way. Like, if the ship was going down, I'm going down with it. Like, there was, we use the term all the time, like, burn the ships, right? Like, there was no turning back. Like, that day where we decided we're going to push through this and we're just going to work even harder, like, legitimately, that was the day where we're like, there is no looking back. Like, this is going to happen. Like, if it kills us or we kill each other, this is going forward. So yeah, I mean, and I think we all, whether we've never actually admitted this to each other, but I think we all had those conversations with ourselves, like, is this really going to work? Even though deep down, like, you're telling yourself it's going to work. It's going to work.
It's going to be
There's
fine.
still that part of you where you're like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm like, my whole life just swirled down the toilet, and I got to go to my mom and be like, yeah,
I told you so.
Yeah, you're right. Now I'm moving back in with my parents at 40 years old, and whatever. But no, and I think the amount of people that, like, we've met and I've met since that, it sounds like we're not unique in any sort of fashion, because anybody that has been part of a startup, they've gone through that, right? Like, you think of, I mean, granted, there's exceptions, but any entrepreneur has lived that, right? I mean, I mean, how many books have been published with stories about that, or how many podcasts, or, I can think of, like, I can count on two hands people that I've met where they're like, yep, I know exactly, like, I didn't realize it till after we got Dialed going, but like my own dad went through it with starting his business, and it's we're not unique in what we went through. I think the part that makes us unique is the fact that we stuck with it and we decided to work even harder and come together as a team and work together versus, you know, because it would have been so easy for like one person to exit and then everything could have just crumbled from that, because
Right.
that's how fragile we were.
Just want to take a quick break to talk to you about a couple of things that I've been using that I think might benefit you. One is this Numa Outdoors gear. This is in their Kaza OV pattern, which is great whitetail pattern when you're up in a tree in the fall and late season. They also have a Kaza pattern which has more green in it, which is good for spring through to the fall. Numa has given me a code to give to you of Caribou Media 20, which will save you 20% at checkout. Another product here that I've been using for years now is the Bulldog targets. This is a Canadian made target. They're made in Manitoba. They have a lifetime warranty. I've used that warranty twice now on a couple of my larger targets that are outside. It's very simple, very easy. These targets are 2-finger removal every single time, which is incredible. Field point only target. Bulldog's been gracious enough to give me a 20% discount code to give to you at checkout. Use code BD20-Caribou-Media. That'll save you 20% on these awesome targets. Now back to the show.
So it was, not only just keeping yourself, mentally, in the game, but making sure everybody else was good too, and it's still like that. We have multiple team meetings every week. Just like, how's everybody doing? Like, everybody good,
Yeah, that's important.
and I never like using the word like family when referencing a business, because I just it's not a family. I mean, it is a business, but it, the group and like the team that we've built, we just keep getting stronger. So
Like a tribe.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So no, I don't know enough of the. I remember when the Arxos came out, but I've had more experience with the Proof. Usually, when companies go through and change something, they change something, one thing, or they change two things. From what I'm hearing, you guys changed a large number of things. This isn't the Arxos 2.0. This is a completely new site.
Yeah,
What
we
were
don't
the
like
big differences?
we don't like making anything easy on ourselves. Like, everything we do,
That's right. Back to the drawing board.
yeah, everything we
Yeah.
do, we always pick the hard way for some reason. But no, yeah, we did. It is truly a version like 2.0. Like, again, going back to kind of the foundation and like the start of Dialed is, that was one thing that we were sick and tired of, is seeing companies come out with products and call it new, and they changed one minor thing. And it's
Right.
like, that's not new. Like,
No.
that is not new, but again, going back to like with the Arxos, from the very beginning, we knew from assembly and a production standpoint, there was stuff we had to fix. Absolutely had to. So we had our own list, kind of building, the background of what needed to change on the manufacturing and assembly side. And because the other thing is, like, the Arxos wasn't profitable. We weren't making any money on it. So we had to make changes. Otherwise, we weren't going to survive, but again, the more Arxos we sold and the more people we talked to, the more feedback we got. And that's why we called the proof, is because it's proof that we listened. And a lot of what we changed came from customer feedback from the Arxos of what they liked, what they didn't like, and like some of the key features, like one of the biggest one is the switch lever. So how, like, now you can absolutely lock the dial on the proof in place, right?
Right.
Which to us was not a necessity in the beginning, but we realized a lot of people, that was important to them. So the switch lever was a huge one, but then just the overall design and making it easier to manufacture, making it easier to assemble. The weight was a big thing, that we heard
Mm.
from people. So trying to make it as light as possible without, sacrificing the integrity um, of the site. So, it's not like there was just one big thing, that we changed. It was a lot of little critical pieces that we changed.
Mhm.
And, a lot of people would look at the Arxos and the proof and just be like, oh, you just changed the look of it. And it's like, yeah, we did. But if you actually drilled down to like the component level, every single component got an overhaul.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, even
you're
our pins. I mean, we changed how we make our pins. Like, I mean, we changed everything.
and it's so versatile, like, I just got my sight tape on a few weeks ago, and because the weather here is in Ontario has been horrible with the snow and everything, but it's
Yeah.
all melting now, so I can start shooting outside again. And what was cool was I got to the closest sight tape I could find, but then there's so many ways that you can fine tune it once it's on there.
Yeah.
You can move the wheel a little bit, you can tighten it down, you can move the pins a little bit, and now it's like perfect. Like
Yeah.
it's not like, oh shit, I gotta go try another tape and then another tape and another tape, right?
Yeah, and that was another thing too, was when it I mean, and to be honest, that was a complete oversight in the design. Here we were all fired up on this angled elevation rail. We had never thought about how are we gonna build tapes? And then all of a sudden the sights, like, parts show up and we're putting them together, and we're like, "Holy shit, we don't have sight tapes." Like literally, it was a
I got
complete
all.
no, it was a complete oversight, and we're like, "Well, how the fuck are we gonna sight these things in?" Because that angled rail, like, nobody had any I mean, it's never been done before, right?
Right.
So but so trying to find the simplest, most accurate way to sight in, the Arxos, that was the next challenge. And, none of us really liked any of, like, the sight tapes we had used in the past or, like, any of the methods of finding the sight tape in the past. Um, and it finding any site tape, there is a process, right? And a lot of people just want that easy button,
Yeah.
and it's just that just doesn't work, right? So it is a process. It does take time, but at least with ours, you sight in your 20-yard mark, get that set, and then you got to shoot some further distance for your second yardage, which that's new to a lot of people. And we always we try to strive that, like, that second yardage is more important than no, excuse
Mhm.
me, that second yardage, the further that distance is, the better.
The
The
better,
most
yeah.
important part is your 20-yard mark because that's what everything is based off of.
Right.
So if your 20-yard mark is off by like a yard or two, that only magnifies the further you go out. So again, really fine tuning the 20-yard mark, but then the further that second yardage is, the better because you're taking a larger sample size. So you're collecting more data to find your yardage tape. So the more
Mhm.
data, the more precise and the more accurate it's going to be. So, like with a lot of the previous methods, with pretty much every other site company where you shoot 20 and 60, and then that's your tape, that's just not enough because now, I mean, with bow setups these days, we're shooting pretty flat out to 60 unless you're shooting some gnarly, heavy arrow setup or low poundage or something unique. But for the most part, I mean, an arrow's only dropping, 12 to 15 inches, from 20 to 60 yards, which seems like a lot, but it's really not that much.
Mhm.
So we like to shoot like 70, 80, or even further for that second yardage. And then you're just taking those two marks and matching them up with the right tape, and that's your tape. And then, like
Yeah.
you said, if you need to tweak it a little bit, you can. You have the multi indicator needles that you can set for your other pin references. So it is a very versatile, kind of site. And once you find the correct yardage tape, you can kind of set the site up however you want to after that. I mean, we've heard
Yeah.
especially with the proof now. I mean, we've heard all kinds of crazy setups because now that we offer the horizontal pin configuration,
Right.
it's to each his own. However you want to run it, run it. It's just you got to do that initial setup. Like there is the right way to do it.
Yeah, I was shooting, 5-pin, horizontal forever and then last year, a couple friends of mine were like, You got to try the vertical pins. Try the 3-pin vertical. It cleans up your sight picture.
Yeah.
Just do it. So I bought a different sight and ran that last year, and I was like, this is amazing. So that's what I've got now. But being able to switch between, like you said, you want to switch that mag out at the front and go back to, like, no problem, right? It's
Yep.
amazing.
Well, and that's the beauty is, if you're somebody where you're shooting a lot of 3D in the summer, you're doing the challenges and stuff,
Yeah.
you can run the vertical pin for that. And then when it comes to hunting season, you can put your horizontal pin head on. And because if assuming you're not changing anything with the speed and stuff, your tape is going to be the exact same. You just have to
Right.
recalibrate the switch tape ring, which are interchangeable, right?
Mhm.
But like for the people where they're using, let's say, you know, a like for me, example, like I'm gonna run the cheapest, crappiest arrow I can at like the total archery challenges because I'm gonna
Oh,
lose
yeah.
my arrows, right? One, because I get bored and I start doing stupid shit,
That's
and
right.
you know, but but for hunting, I'm going to shoot a much more higher quality, heavier arrow. Well, that's two different sight tapes, right? But I don't have to go back and resight in. I just swap the rings out. And it's the same thing for swapping the heads. You can
Yeah.
have a ring with a tape installed set up for that horizontal head, and you're just swapping them out. And I mean, it's such a flexible system and a versatile system
And you've got the ability to have 2 different tapes on at the same time.
with
So
the proof.
if you
Yeah.
were doing, like, say you were doing indoor or 3D and you were using one setup and then you had your hunting setup on the inside, like, it's just, you don't have to do anything. You could
No,
just
no,
leave it away.
you could literally run, the 2 tapes at the same time, and you're just changing the arrow setups, right? Or, like, a really good buddy of ours, and granted, I mean, this is a very unique and, niche, you know, situation, but, like, he was over in Africa, and he was gonna go for a Cape buffalo and plains game, and he had both
Oh,
arrows in his
2 different, 2 very different. Yeah,
had,
yeah.
his Cape buffalo arrow was like 800 something grains. And I actually had to custom build him a tape for that because it was just, I mean, I think his max distance was like 50 yards, which, I mean, you're shooting a Cape buffalo at point blank anyways with a bow. But so, yeah, he ran his Cape buffalo set up on the outside ring and his plains game on the inside ring. So, I mean, Africa, for anybody that's hunted there, it's a target rich environment. You never know when a opportunity is going to present itself.
Yeah.
So he was just grabbing different arrows depending on what he was going to shoot. But I mean, so yeah, again, it's just a very versatile system. And like I don't run 2 yardage tapes because I pretty much use the same arrow for everything. I don't do as much shooting as I used to just because for how busy we are. But I always leave the setup tape on the outside. So I always have that to reference. You
Right.
know what I mean? And you're just no matter what happens, like, I do spend quite a bit of time out west, elk hunting and stuff like that. And it's like if you're in the backcountry and something happens, like there's not an archer shop for hours away.
Mhm.
But so if something happens to my yardage tape, I still have my setup tape installed to where I can just either remake new marks or I already have my original marks on there and I know, right? So you're never out of the hunt. Like you can just keep
That's
trucking
smart.
along.
That's
So like
smart.
I mean, and that's like one of our primary, sayings we use is, everything on the Arxos and the Proof was designed on purpose. Like there's a reason for everything that we put into it. So again, it and we always say, it was designed by hunters for hunters.
Right.
And so if and like, if we wouldn't use it, we don't sell it. So it's we truly do, try to look at it from like, how can we make the overall experience better and benefit the shooter the most.
And I always wonder about patents, like, what's that process like? Do you have to hire someone to search through all that shit to see what people
Oh
have
yeah.
done and make sure you're not encroaching on anything, or is that
Oh
something
yeah.
you
I
do
mean, that
yourself?
was that was the first thing we did. Obviously, again, giving my background and all of ours, past experiences, like we knew when we launched Dialed, like we were painting a target on our back, right? And
Mm.
just from an industry as a whole. But yeah, I mean, we spent so much time and money hiring patent attorneys to research. So we knew, and because I mean, that was truly one thing. Like, I mean, we didn't want to step on anybody's toes,
Right.
and we wanted to do things on our own in our own way, but we also wanted to be respectful of everybody else and what they were doing. So yeah, I mean, we spent a ton of time researching, both on our own, but then also hiring, patent attorneys to research. And anytime we designed like a component, we researched it. If we made changes to anything, we researched it,
Oh, wow.
just to make sure that, again, we already knew we were going to be kicking a hornet's nest, and we just wanted to try to avoid as much collateral damage as possible.
Right.
But ultimately, you know, people get pissed when you're trying to do something, good and, better yourself, and it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, and we filed for patents on our own stuff, and that is a long process. It's very drawn out. Um, and in the end, you know, there's not really anything stopping somebody from copying us. I mean, we're gonna defend everything that we've worked very hard for and have sacrificed so much for. Like,
Mhm.
but you know, at some point, I mean, everything costs money too. So it's kind of a fucked up system, to be honest.
Yeah. Anything with lawyers is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're an absolute necessity, but they're
Yeah.
also, I mean, they're a very expensive, necessity as well. But yeah, I mean, between attorneys, CPAs, bankers, I mean,
They're
it's kind
yeah.
of that's all stuff you don't really think about when you're going into it, because you're just looking at like, oh, this is gonna be so much fun, like, and then you drop $75,000 on a mold, and your banker calls you and be like, what the, like, I didn't approve this. And I'm like, well, it's my money. Like, you don't have to
That's right.
approve,
It
and
happened.
yeah, and what are you going to do about it now?
Right. You
So
gave it to me.
yeah, I know. I know. I feel like every week my banker, he calls me and be like, what it like, can you explain this? And be like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Just trust me.
yeah, yeah, leave me alone, but no, and in the end, I mean, again, even like I look at it from, like our bank and our CPA, I mean, they're huge bow hunters and, love what we're doing and believe in us. And, and even like our attorneys, like that's the cool thing about Dialed. Even like our I guess I could call them like babysitters, because they do watch our backs and make sure we don't do anything stupid.
Mhm.
But like even those guys are all bow hunters, so it's like
Nice.
everybody at Dialed, from, I mean, the outside in, we are all diehard bow hunters. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
We don't really kill much, but which is
Yeah, we don't hunt anymore, but we make some pretty cool shit.
yeah, we make some cool shit and we do some cool marketing stuff. But when it comes to the
Yeah.
actual putting our products to use, we try really hard. We just we might quite possibly shoot some of the smallest animals like out of any other company, but we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah, you guys definitely broke the mold, that's for sure,
Yeah.
and separated yourself from everybody else. Is there, are there any other archery products you guys are thinking of reaching into that you can talk
Yeah,
about,
I
or
mean, I'll be honest, and nothing I would
nothing's
say that's
impossible?
like that. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, at this point, anything is possible. I mean, I think what we've done and kind of what we've created, like, that Dialed from the beginning, we all said like we're not going to be just a site company. Like, we
Right.
want this to be a true like brand. And so yeah, I mean, we're always looking at like what are some other categories we could get into where it would make sense based on like what we're already doing. Like coming up here soon, you'll start to see some expansion on like the lifestyle, stuff, and tapping into some different kind of marketing ideas with that. Cause that's just fun, and
Yeah.
again, it kind of shows who we are like as a brand and, the personality behind Dialed. But on the actual product side, I mean, we have some ideas and, some things that, we're working on, but again, nothing's really been, you know, nothing's been confirmed yet.
Right.
You know, the proof, the proof has just, you know, it's been it's been just awesome. I mean, since launch, so we're staying more than busy, you know, trying to keep up with that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we haven't even scratched the surface with the opportunities for that, you know, especially with the event season coming up and stuff. But yeah, I mean, we're always, you know, we're always, you know, scheming and thinking, and you know, you know what would be cool, you know, those
That's right.
reasons. But
Somebody write that down.
yeah, but you know, again, you know, it's just and you know, more than ever, I've realized and learned that, I mean, new products, you know, innovation, trying new things, it does cost a lot of money. So,
Yeah.
you know, and again, with us being a small team, and it's just you know, we are limited, but you know, we don't have there's no we don't have any ambitions to slow down or,
Mhm.
you know, take our foot off the gas pedal. If anything, we're kind of thinking the exact opposite, you know. And you know, I remember, and I've said this before, you know, like when we started Dialed, the first thing I did was, I mean, I listened to every entrepreneur podcast you could think of. I read every book you could think of. And you know, the one thing they all say is just, you know, don't grow too fast. Like, you
Yeah.
know, grow at
Yeah.
your own pace, which we definitely have, but we're also to the point where, you know, we can taste, you know, that little sliver of success, and like we're truly building what we started off to build, you know, and it's all because of the proof. So it's like we could keep growing at the rate that we're growing, but imagine if we just dumped a little bit of gas on the fire, like, you know, imagine what we could do. So now
Yeah.
that's kind of where all of our heads are at. It's like, okay, well, if we were to jump a little bit of gas on the fire, what do we need to make that happen? Right.
Mhm.
So we'll see. I mean, time
And
will tell.
you guys also, I love that how open you are with everybody and how, Taylor's doing those updates, walking around the shop. We can see
Yep.
you putting the sites together. You're doing the weekly updates. You do
Yep.
those amazing batch drops, like you just did one with Bottomlands, and like you're just tapping in on every cool idea. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's, I mean, again, from day one, we've always just tried to be as transparent, you know, and just, this is us, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, and, you know, we definitely kind of have a different, you know, demeanor or like personality than a lot of brands. You know, we are competitive, and but we also want people to realize that, like, you know, when you spend your money at Dialed or when you buy something from us, like how much it truly means to us. And like, you know, we are fully aware that our stuff is not cheap, but you know, when you buy a site, you know, you're supporting Johnny and his family, you're supporting Isaiah, you're supporting all these people that, you know, are part of this amazing team. And you know, that was a, you know, one of the most important parts to us is or you know, I guess I get, yeah, one of the most important parts of like Dialed is, you know, building quality products, you know, the best customer service that we can possibly offer. But then, you know, we really want to make, you know, build this community where, you know, even if you don't buy a site from us, like if you believe in what we're doing, you believe in, you know, supporting, you know, small American made businesses, like we're those guys, you
Yeah.
know. And
Totally.
yeah, you know, just trying to give back to a community and an industry that has, you know, given me a lot over the years and has brought, you know, Dialed. I mean, Dialed wouldn't exist without the community that has shown up to support us. So, you know, by giving those weekly updates and, you know, the snapshots, this is what it's like, you know, being at Dialed. It's just, you know, that's kind of an open door policy of like, hey, you know, come in and join the team, you know, like check
Yeah.
us out, you know, type of deal. So, but
Yeah, when I was so I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant, so I shoot left.
same.
So I
Yep.
know.
Same.
Oh, hey, all right. So
Yep.
so
I'm a lefty.
I
Yep.
I never get to shoot a bow before I buy it because it's
Same.
never in stock, right? So
Never. I always
never.
had to shoot them right-handed, and I was like, well, if they
Yeah.
feel good right-handed, they must feel really good left-handed.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So or you
Yeah.
just pick one up, you're like, okay, good. That's great. And I
Yeah.
remember I had so I had my order in with you guys, and I got an email from Isaiah just saying, "Hey, parts are coming. It's thanks for your patience. I appreciate it. You know, we're just working on this or that." And I was like, "Hey, man, I appreciate the update. Like that's I don't want you to rush. Like just get it. You know, I'm in no hurry." So it's
Yep.
having that getting that from a company is rare. You wouldn't necessarily get that, right?
Yeah, and it's, again, like that's we do our best again to try to be proactive and reach out to people if there's going to be delays or if there's any issues with getting components, again, like just being transparent and sometimes there are delays and we do drop the ball from time to time and but again we just want people to realize like with the price tag that comes with our products, like you're not just buying a product with that price tag, right? Like there's also a service and a backing that comes with it. So like
Right.
we truly stand behind everything we do and again and just kind of show that your hard-earned money is going towards a group of guys that do truly care about you as our customer and as a community member and so yeah and that's one thing, no matter how big we get or how much we grow, like I don't ever want to lose sight of that because we would never be where we're at without those people. So
Hmm.
you gotta, I mean, we just always try to keep that in the front of our minds. And like I said, we definitely do get stuck in our day to day with, trying to build sites as fast as we can and trying to keep up with production to where, we may, like I said, kind of drop the ball from here and then, or every now and then, but it's not intentional. And I mean, we'll make it up to you one way or another. But,
Hmm.
so yeah, I mean, the customer service side, that's just one of the most important things to us.
Do you have any advice for anybody who's thinking of bringing a product to market, and what are some lessons that they should,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how long do you
Don't
have?
do
Don't
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
run
don't
the
do
other
it.
way.
Yeah, don't do it. No, I can it's easy. Again, a lot of people can be like, "Oh, it's easy for you to say," like, but it's where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, that is truly like I always hated that saying, like growing
Mhm.
up, because it's just
Yeah,
so cliche. But it's like it is truly amazing how many of those stupid, like annoying, sayings are actually true. And the if you truly believe that what you have is something that you can make a go at it, just fucking do it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Sitting and like what if you're never going to do it. Like you just have to make the jump. And I mean there's definitely things like I look back where I'm like I would maybe do this different or do that different, but if you did, we would never be where we are today. But I
right,
mean it definitely is not starting your own business, taking that risk. Like it is not for the faint of heart. And again, anybody that's done it, they know. I mean, they've been through it. Again, we're not unique in that way. But I, that somebody once told me, or I heard it or read it that 999 businesses out of 1,000 fail, but not because it was a bad idea or the founder didn't know what they were doing or whatever. It's just the timing wasn't right.
right.
And I think that is truly where we nailed it. Is we just could not have picked a better time to introduce a new product into this category. But you know I think my biggest advice, and again we learned it the hard way, is do your market research ahead of time. Like make sure you know what you're getting into, right? And but don't let because that was the one thing that could have kept us from even beginning, is like, oh, the site category is a saturated market, and it definitely is.
Mhm.
But that's even more reason to do it, because it means there's business to be had, right? But in and again, the whole reason we started Dialed was because watching what everybody was doing, and nobody was really staying in their own lane. Everybody was kind of following the same path, and then we picked our path and we've stuck with it. We've never deterred from it because somebody else is doing something else. We've just stuck to our own big game plan. And I think that's one of the most important things is, yeah, you can pay attention to what other people are doing, but stick to you. You do you. And
Yeah.
again, if you're unique, you have your own unique concepts, your own unique designs, your own unique personality, that will prevail over everybody trying to just copy, other people's ideas. And I can think of multiple companies that's what they do. And they've been successful thus far, but there's no longevity in that.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, and
Yeah,
and, and
nice.
that was one thing, I do hope Dialed, and like when people hear our story, it does motivate people to take that jump, because especially in our industry, the archery industry, as well as, plenty of other industries, like that is the future of that industry. Like, especially, and again, I use the archery industry as an example because I've grown up in it and I've seen how it's changed. And it will, like, we need new blood. Like, it needs younger,
Mhm.
newer, fresher blood to
Mhm.
keep it innovating.
Right.
And again, so like if anybody's like on the fence, like if we can do it, you can do it, but it's not easy. Like,
Mhm.
in the amount that, like, nobody will truly understand like the sacrifices we've made unless you've actually done it.
Right.
And that's just part of it. And you know it's, again, one of the most, cliche sayings is you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, there's nothing more uncomfortable than, sitting here and being like, this week's payroll week. Like, are we going to be able to make payroll? Like, I know exactly how much we have to do this week in order to make payroll. Or like, me on the owner side, like, that's another big misconception, because you see it all over social media. Like, oh, you own your own business, you must be rich.
You must be
Fuck
rich.
no. Like, every week I go more and more into debt because we're investing all the money back into the company,
Right.
and but again, like, that's just part of it. And it's not always going to be like that. And there are days where I'm like, man, I'm going on 4 years without an income. Like, I don't know how much longer I can hold on, but you just got to stick with it, and just, you can't give up, but again, you have to be okay with, like, I'm missing one of my best friend's bachelor parties in 2 weeks because I can't afford to miss work and go out there and take 4 days off of work, and it's
Right.
just, sacrifices have to be made. And it sucks, but in the end, it pays off, so
There you
there's a
go.
lot to sift through there. So somewhere in there's good advice,
Yeah, yeah. No, that was
I don't know
good.
on what part, but like, there's some good advice in there somewhere.
For sure. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I
Yeah,
absolutely,
absolutely.
I love your site. I think I can say this because I'm not just saying this because you're here. I honestly think it's the best site on the market. Again, I haven't shot them all, but that's my opinion. And and I can't wait to get to TAC to shoot it at crazy, unheard of distances. Are you going to many events this year?
I'll be at almost all of them.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, at least, I mean, yeah, I think we're doing, so for total archery challenges here, in the States, I think they have 15 planned this year, and I think we'll be at 12 of them.
Okay. I'm
So
coming
yeah,
down to the PA one, so I'll
I'll
find
be
you.
there. I'll
I'll
be
find you.
there. Oh yeah, yeah, you better.
Awesome. I will. I'll help sell some sites. I'll jump behind the table or something and give you a hand.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Because that's like our halfway mark. So by that time, I mean, you'll probably just see me wandering around aimlessly like a senile old man. Like, I wouldn't even know where I am at that point.
Anybody know where Scott went?
Yeah, has everybody seen the long-haired tattooed guy?
That's right. I also
That's like
wanted
that's like nobody knows my name. That's just everybody. That's just like my name, like the long-haired tattoo. And my hair's not even that long anymore.
to yeah.
So
I also wanted to thank you guys for supporting. There's an archery event that I'm helping put on. It's going to be three events here in Ontario in May and July and September. And you guys have donated some prizes for that, so I appreciate that.
absolutely,
We're raising money for each club, and all the money will go back to the club. So
yeah, yeah,
it's going
absolutely.
to be exciting.
Yeah, like I
So
said, I mean, that's one of our big things is just, support the archery community as much as we can. And, so yeah, no, more than happy, and appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk and share our story more than more than we already have.
Yeah. There's Dialed Archery on Instagram, and on the website, and then you also have Dialed Archery Shop as well. Is that another? That's
Yep.
another page you guys are running. Yeah.
Yep. So that's our second kind of backup. And I don't know the correct terminology because I don't do social media, but yeah, it's just a secondary Dialed page that's kind of a more like raw look at Dialed. The main page, which is just Dialed Archery. You see a lot of the cool like photos and stuff, but the Dialed shop is just kind of more like the raw like real deal type of photos. But yeah, otherwise just
Nice.
dialedarchery.com. So, and like I said, we have more small batches are coming up here, so we'll be announcing those in the near future. And
Nice.
like I said, we have some cool stuff on the lifestyle side that are gonna be coming up too. So lot going on in the near future.
Awesome. All right. We'll see you soon down in PA.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Take care.